Jenna, welcome to She's Wealthy.
I'm so excited to be here and I'm so grateful to be part of this, your first roster of people on your podcast. I just feel really lucky.
Oh, that means so much to me. I'm honored to have you on. I've followed you for a while now, and we met in Ibiza a couple, or I guess last month. Time is bizarre at the summit, and it was so wonderful meeting you in person. You have the best, like, warm presence, and I'm just really excited to have you here. It feels like a full circle moment for me.
Thank you so much. And I've been loving following your journey up until now. I think that's one of the things that is so special now is that everybody is on this journey of growth that is so different, but ultimately comes down to the same similar things where we're all going through
Hmm.
this, like these ego deaths and shedding old layers and at such a fast rate that it's so helpful to see other people go through their own version to kind of keep you going on yours.
Oh gosh,
So I've
it's
loved watching
so
this.
helpful. Yeah, it's so helpful because you can feel so alone when you're like, I don't want to use the word killing off, but sort of like outgrowing versions of yourself and trying to discover who you are. And I I followed you for a while, but something I did not know about you that I saw this morning on Instagram that made me so excited for this conversation is that you used to be an atheist. And
Yes.
I and I used to be an atheist slash like agnostic for the my entire life up until literally I want to say like 6 months ago. So I'm in recovery. So I've been in AA for 4 years and I had to like find a higher power. But for the first like 3 years, it was sort of just like this general universe concept, I didn't really understand. And it's only been recently that I sort of actually understand, what is going on and have sort of awakened to the real nature of the universe. And I think why this is exciting is because I think people talk about spiritual concepts and it can be really hard for grounded people to resonate with it because it's like, okay, this person's always been spiritual. They're kind of airy fairy, like living in the clouds. But to hear this conversation from two people that genuinely didn't believe there was anything higher than us or greater than us, I think is going to make this just even that much more impactful. So I'm curious about like, how did something happen in your life that pushed you to explore spirituality, or was it sort of like a slow like curiosity?
It was, it's really interesting. I was, I didn't really have wounds from school. You know how people are like, I wasn't smart. I was always bottom of the class. Like I got bullied and stuff. But one of the things that was my sort of gift at the time was that I always had like a freakishly high IQ, never needed my parents with homework, A's on every test. Like I breezed through school with barely any effort, like never did my homework, never studied, all that sort of thing. So come to 18 and I decide not to go to college afterwards and just get working straight away. And I think that was the beginning of like a real like low self-worth thing because I just felt like I'd been fed to the dogs and there was no structure to kind of hold me or tell me what to do. And it's funny because it's a very existential thing I think we're all going through right now is like all the manuals, all the constructs, all the scaffolding around us is crumbling. It means everything is possible, but what do I want to do with that? Like that's a blessing and a curse.
Mm, hmm.
So at 18, my parents were like, you can not go to college because neither of them went. But you can't, sit on your backside all day on the couch. Like you've got to find stuff to do. And I tried so many things and nothing really felt like I could hit my stride in it. Fast forward to 3 years later, I was still kind of like whirling, loads of internships, whatever. And someone had told me about Kabbalah.
Ah, okay, that's how you got into the interesting.
Yeah, and then it took me a whole year later after this person told me about it. I went for an astrology reading with one of the Kabbalistic astrologers, and my agnostic, actually hardcore atheist, I would say, because I was always a science nerd growing up, always
Hmm.
obsessed with quantum physics when I was 12 years old, amazing at maths, like all that stuff. That ended up working against me. When I heard her, though, it was literally like she'd read me like an open book that kind of blew my whole worldview open.
Mm.
And then when I slowly started understanding more that it's kind of a mathematical calculation, astrology. So that helped bring my sort of, left brain and my right brain along for the same journey. But I did get very, very lost in the source for the probably the first 7 years after that. I dove straight into, all the woo without really feeling like I was also working on the backing. So I do think I'm really happy that you bring this up, because I do think it's really important for people to learn to give both sides their energy and the balance, and to question everything, even platitudes that sound really good, so that you really like embed them in your own cells rather than just kind of like the idea of them.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's something that we're all working on doing at the moment. There's a concept in human design that talks about how the mind and the intellect has to surrender to the form at some point, meaning that it's good to learn, it's good to educate yourself, but at some point on the spiritual journey, you have to learn it and then also apply it. You also have to live it. You have to embody it. So you have to say, I know what I need to know, but that's not going to make my life decisions for me. Other people's advice, the facts, the information, especially because they're being updated really fast at the moment. So ultimately, we have to say there's something deeper than just what the mind knows, even if the mind thinks it knows everything because it knows all the spiritual stuff.
Yeah.
It still has to, at some point, we have to become the authority of our own lives and embrace choices that don't make sense, that no one else is going to confirm or corroborate, they're going to work out. And that's kind of when the hero's journey starts. Everything else before that is just preparation.
Yeah, really beautiful. And it sounds like this kind of happened to you over a long period of time, because something that I experienced was like I mentioned prior to the last like 6 months, I didn't really even understand what manifestation was before January. And I see Michelle, the intuitive that you had recommended in your stories, and she was saying to me like your spirit guides are sort of showing me this visual that they just like stripped you, like waxed you, and just like threw you on a train like 500 miles per hour. So what I experienced in like learning all of these spiritual concepts was like the way that I'd seen the world for 32 years was completely different within 6 months, and it was really difficult to integrate. So it can be different for different people, where it's like sometimes I'm a very all or nothing, like very intense person at times, and so it needed to be very quick for me. But I do kind of envy sometimes the people where it's like it is a slow unfolding, because when you get pushed into the deep end and the way that you see the world changes so quickly, it's like, how am I going to change my actual reality to reflect what I now know?
Yeah. It's very jarring to the physiology, actually. That's it's the same way that if you smoke 20 a day and then you give up all of a sudden, it's actually harder for the body to kind of do things straight away. And sometimes we make those things happen for ourselves because we want the quick results. But actually, what we need to remember, I think now more than ever, is like change, really your change, like the becoming of you is built brick by brick, day by day. Of course, some people need the catalyst and then you don't have a choice,
Yeah.
but it's also that there is something to be said for a graceful but well intentionally built path, if you can orient yourself to that. And then we all have these tower moments that do just come in
Yeah.
and shake us when we really need to go
Yeah.
back on the path.
Yeah, that's definitely what I needed for sure. I needed to have no other choice but to find God, quote unquote. So,
Yeah.
I'm curious your perspective on like, do you think that, why do you think that certain people awaken, quote unquote, and others do not? Like, do you think that life is always giving everybody an opportunity to go down this path and certain people ignore it? Or are certain people just meant to sort of lead this way? Or how do you conceptualize that?
I try to look at everything from a multi-layered sort of approach. So when you're asking me that question, most humans only really learn from enough pain and suffering to stop doing the same thing over and over. And I remember my Kabbalah teacher, the astrologer, the second time I went to see her, she said to me, the tests or the challenges from the universe, they start off really subtle and then they get louder and louder until they get so big that you have no choice but to listen. And I remember, Christina, I literally left that meeting with her. As I was walking down the street, I said probably the most powerful prayer I've ever felt, like from my insides. I said, please, universe at the time, help me have eyes to spot when the tests are graceful, and I will listen.
Ah, beautiful.
That was a really, really important thing. I also think, though, that if you believe in reincarnation, we are at different levels of consciousness and of desire. In this lifetime, it might not be someone's desire, or it might not be the universe's agenda for that person to have a spiritual awakening. I think the reason why there's so many people having it now is because the world is ready. But I do believe that eventually that's where we all get to in the end. So we also have to not judge people. And this is something that I've really gone through and still sometimes continue to go through, is no one's behind. And also, I've been so humbled by certain people. I mean, this is now, when I was 21, that's what, 17 years ago now. People who I wrote off completely, people who I thought would never. And my ego sort of like got used to that feeling of like, there's certain people over there and then there's people here like me. And, that the world over, what I say, in my old self would think is only people like me, is getting bigger and bigger. Now, ultimately, will I enjoy a world like that more? Absolutely. So my ego has to stop being separatist about it. Because I want parents who are on this journey who I can talk about this stuff with. Of course. Why would I resist that? I would want to learn from them again. I would want to learn from people who I thought were, whatever it is. So I do think that it's important to not write anyone off, because people could get there and even overtake you from before. And also just understand that some people, we had to learn how to put food on the table in terms of us as souls, but also people in our ancestry had to be able to do that so that we could afford to do this. There are some people in other parts of the world where their spiritual journey is to learn to care about their kids enough to put food on the table. That is a spiritual journey still.
Yeah.
So the lessons, I think, don't avoid anyone.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's interesting too, because as I've gone through this journey, you learn that it is really infectious. Like there's people in my life that I never in a million years would have ever thought would have, number one, done any inner work, but number two, been curious about these concepts. And I'll get like texts or calls and be like, I saw you like post about this. Can you like explain a little more about this? Or like, oh, Christina, I've been like thinking about like, why am I buying so many designer things? Like, I'm not really happy. And I'm like, ooh, this is exciting for me to witness. Like it's an infectious thing when more people are awakening.
And it's also really important when people do have those awakenings. I'll speak for myself, to not be like, I told you this all along, or I knew this myself, or I had a feeling it was coming, or whatever. And to really be humble, because they realize things that but they're living it now. And so they're the ones who burn the tokens. It's not enough to know what someone should do. And then it really opens you up to receive. I think as women, like, we have hard times a lot of the time receiving, but it's beautiful to receive wisdom from multiple different sources instead of have to only be in your silo learning from Instagram. It's amazing to open up and learn different people around you express knowledge and wisdom that you kind of know, but in their own way, and it has its own frequency, even if you're saying the same thing, which is it makes your life so rich.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I feel like going back to what you were saying about life trying to teach you similar lessons, the way that I phrase this sometimes is that life, when you're out of alignment, life will kind of like whisper at you and your body will whisper at you. And then one day it just like screams full force. And I'm curious for you if there was like any area of your life that you kind of felt that in. For me, I know about myself that I grow spiritually in relationships. And I think there were like multiple times throughout my life where constantly in my life, reaching outside of myself for fulfillment through another person. And my ultimate kind of like breaking point, like death of soul, came in like the perfect lesson of being with this man, horrible breakup that brought me to my knees and just needing to be like, okay, now's the time to turn inward and figure out, like, be quiet with yourself, because the universe is trying to tell you something right now. And it was only when I had the courage to actually listen to that all of this growth came about. That really it took me for a ride for a long time, but I'm so grateful for, because now everything has changed.
I would say that I've been through similar things, been through a breakup of an engagement, and, moved countries and been nomadic and felt lost and all those things. But I would say that my biggest moment was actually that moment when I was 22 and just looking for an answer somewhere, because I felt like no one could give it to me. Because what I later realized is that I think my most uncomfortable feeling, and I believe this is actually the way with a lot of us, is existential. And I think we come in with like a default negative feeling, which is actually not a negative feeling. It's kind of the realization that being a soul and squeezed into a tiny body is very weird and uncomfortable. And it's very, I think we feel the pain of not being as close to the divine anymore when we come in.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember my childhood, the overarching thing for me was, why is everybody so stressed and heavy? And there should be better than this. Like, what is the point of this world? What are the rules? That doesn't make sense to me. I don't get it. And I think that has been, and still follows me in deeper layers. The thing that really spurs me on is when I hit a lower feeling that again. And that's actually why, ironically, I feel maybe that was the thing that I was always meant to feel, because now I'm having the best time ever, because this world is showing me that it is changing in the way that I always dreamed it could change to. So whenever I hit those kind of existential, like, loneliness and sadness, which I've hit often, and often not necessarily created by something on the outside, and that's when I know that something else has to change on the inside for me.
Yeah, it's interesting how people just have very different curriculums for how they're supposed to learn and grow, and kind of accepting that, like, what you're being given in life. David talked about this in Ibiza, like having the certainty of whatever is happening to you is good, whether it feels good or bad in the moment. The certainty that, like, it is exactly what you need for your spiritual development is
Yeah.
an interesting concept.
It's a great one, because funny enough, a lot of people who follow my work or are part of my app or listen to my podcast, I call them my cluster, they've heard, the word certainty. And I think it's a hard thing to grasp if you're doing it by spiritual bypass of like, I have certainty, I have certainty.
Yes.
It can eventually get in that way, but it gets in probably slower and less in a grounded way. When I was first studying Kabbalah, there was a concept that every year, instead of choosing 100 things to work on, just choose one and really give it your all the energy for that year, because succeeding at one thing will help you so much more than, being scattered and being distracted. And maybe I should do this and I need to change this about myself, whatever. So I said to my teacher, the astrologer, what do you think I should work on? I'm 24 at the time. She says certainty. So what I've come to understand about certainty, and I hope this is helpful for people because it really helped me too, is that certainty is something that comes to you. It's a visceral feeling when you constantly are meeting a fork in the road where you feel uncertain, and you say, okay, even if I'm uncertain, help me believe that this is good. Help me see how it's good. Like, I'm not just going to take your word for it, big guy upstairs. Like,
Yeah.
help me see. And I think people need to realize that they can call on asking for evidence instead of being like blindly expected to just follow. And then that's what catches us away with the fairies, because we're conceptually trying to be certain, but we're not.
Right.
We're not viscerally, empirically gathering evidence that we can be certain. And then certainty is just hope practiced over and over again. It's to say, this is a shit situation, but let me see if I can turn this around. And then realizing that it's not about just being certain is going to be the thing that causes it. It's like, okay, this is a team here. Tell me what I need to do to make the situation better, like how I change my energy to infuse the outcome with a better version of me, because that's what life really wants us to do anyway. And then if I do my part, universe, you come through and show me that this issue is real. So
Yeah.
I think that helps you kind of like just not take it to this concept and live in the concept.
Totally. Yeah. And also not avoiding your feelings as well. It's sort of like feeling the sadness, feeling the grief while acknowledging that you will be okay. So it's sort of a dual process for getting through those times. So astrology and human design. Okay. I obviously, you could guess this about me as my atheist self, for the longest time just thought astrology was like, you mentioned this in your Instagram, like a Daily Mail, silly thing. I never actually truly identified with my, I don't want to say horoscope, but with my,
Your chart?
my chart. Yes, exactly. Until recently. And it's been interesting because I realized that a lot of the things I was avoiding about my chart were things I was avoiding about myself. And as I've journeyed back to myself in the last 6 months, I've been like, oh, no, this is all really, really accurate. And so I'm curious, like, if there's somebody listening that is very scientific, very grounded, how is all of this rooted in science?
Okay, now this is a question that gets me so excited. Okay, so astrology is just the study of planets' movement through space. If we were living totally naturally, we would be very, very adept at knowing how the map of the sky changed every night. Imagine if every time it was dark, we'd have a fire, there'd be no Netflix, we'd all be looking outside, lying down, looking at the stars, talking and singing. We would know. It
Yeah.
would be obvious because our intention would be on that, right? So, what is amazing about astrology is that multiple different civilizations were coming up with these maps independently of each other at the same time, right? The Mayans, the Indians, the Egyptians, they were all doing it without necessarily knowing each other, unless they did, who knows? But why have they all come up with the same symbols, the same signs, divided the sky in the same way? And they've used these divisions and they've calculated them not just because someone woke up one day and thought that was a nice, neat thing to do, but because of there seems to be at the summer solstice some kind of cluster that is always on the horizon on June the 21st, right? And then, wow, how interesting that it changes slightly and it moves angle from one year to the next. And they use this information to not just be doing divination and knowing themselves, but they used it to figure out where to put the crops because it would affect the time, how much sunlight is exposed to this certain crop. Okay, so the crop needs to move across the other side of the mountain so it's exposed to more sunlight, for example, right? So astronomy and astrology were much more interlinked. Now, the reason why I like astrology is because, every time clock is man-made or every time tracking device is man-made, the clock of our world is our movement around the stars, and it is the only clock that's not man-made. So if someone else has an answer that's better than a human brain, it's that. Now, if you also believe in quantum physics and you believe in the observer effect, it's not that the planets are these things that are controlling us. It's a fact that when you seek an answer, you shall find. And so the universe, in its ever-ending grace, gives us this way of measuring certain things that would be placed inside of us or certain energies that we would be contending with at any given point in time by noting the movement of physical space through time. Because in human design, and I believe science is going to catch up with this, we live in a space-time continuum, but space is so much more of a physical predictor and easier to measure because time bends all the time. Space is what we're always moving through. Time we can change and time we can collapse. But the actual space itself is held for this illusion, right? For the purpose of this illusion. And it's what we measure. Like, okay, if I needed to know where you were on your journey, I'm not going to tell the time. I'm going to say, where is Christina? Like, how am I going to geolocate you? That's how I would know out of 8 billion humans, where is she right now? That's Christina. There's nothing else that signals you aside from where you are. And so that's the reason why astrology makes sense to me, is that in the same way that you look for an answer in a book and you see it. It's the algorithm, but of the world. And ultimately, it's actually the seeker that determines the quality of the information that comes back. So if you're a skeptic like I was, the stars are going to make no sense. If you are looking for an answer and you're expecting it to give you the answer that you secretly want to hear to make your ego feel better, it's also not going to function as well. If you truly go in with total openness and surrender and the willingness to hear whatever message is going to come through to you, then all of these things suddenly work. So I don't really mind whether you go to a tarot reader, an astrologer, a human design person. I care that the person sharing the information is doing it with integrity, and I care that you're asking the questions from a place of true humility.
Yeah, I love that. And my question would be, so sort of your chart based on when you're born, where you're born, and forgive me because I'm like, basics of this. Do you believe that everybody on earth, if they were their truest self, taking away conditioning, taking away fears, taking away traumas, do you believe that that is a picture of that person?
I believe that your astrology is always a picture of you.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that how the planets are currently affecting your specific chart is always accurate. The place that we have to make the decision is that every single planet, every single sign, every single everything we have can have a wide range, and does have a wide range of the way we choose to express it. So everything has a plus and a minus version of itself, right? There's a very low consciousness way you can express that, and there's a very high consciousness way you can express that. So the potential, the highest potential, is everything positive, and the journey is, where are we using those things still in the not so positive ways, or we're just keeping them suppressed altogether because they're just not qualities or traits that we want to energize for some reason, and because of conditioning and all of that stuff. But I do think that everyone has an incredible chart, whether you're talking about astrology or human design. I fall in love every time I look at someone's chart, because it's just a different specialness of human that you've never seen before. But it's up to us and how we iterate that thing.
Mm-hmm. And then how does human design fall into all of this? And what
So
is human design?
So human design is the thing that, after my 7 year thing of feeling very lost just in the spiritual world, from 22 to, I was probably a bit shorter than, probably 21 until 27, 26, I'd say. I was just going to every seminar, reading every book, 1111, da da da, which there's no hate to 1111, but I thought that it started and ended there, you know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then my life still wasn't moving forward. It just wasn't like feeling like the way I wanted to feel it. So I was like kind of over indexing on the ideas, and the ideas of the promise, and the promise of the ideas. But I wasn't really taking charge of my life. I was giving it over to thinking that just learning was enough, and just speaking and swimming in these waters was enough. Then, when I was 27, I met a shaman who my mom recommended to me. He'd really helped her with her vertigo, and he did many things in the session. One of the things that he brought up was my human design, and I'd never heard of it before. And it was the first time where I knew it was a specific manual on how I work, right? I knew my astrology, but it's not as much of a manual. It's more like, this is who you are.
Yeah.
And it's predictive, which is great. And then the general spiritual advice is amazing, but we still live in a sea of homogenized information, where it's like, surrender, or it's like, here's the 5 things you need to do to be successful, or everyone has if you need to work out, you've got to have a strategy, whatever. And I just felt like I was just swimming and bombarding my own brain with all of this stuff, until I met this guy. And he said to me, he said to me things that I secretly wish could be the manual, that no one had ever said to me before. He said, listen, you're a projector. You need to work 2-3 hours a day. I could see you like on a beach with your phone, like doing your thing. And I was like, hold on a second. What? How is this? Is like, he's inside my brain, like knowing my secret wish. Like, what is going on? And that was just the first thing he said to me. He said so many, like, he said everything to me about, I was like, is someone inside my cells? And that just turned something on to me, because I was like, oh my gosh. And I'm very how do I put this, individualist to a fault, sometimes too much. I can be contrarian in a negative way, but the positive side of that was like, oh my god, I've always felt that there's like customizer, we're all different, we all need a different manual. And that's where I took to it like I was deep in the second I learned from him. And then I just started learning from him, and it just took over my life, really. I didn't feel like I had a choice at some point to close my food business at the time, and start doing this, even though 2017, it wasn't cool. It wasn't, no one else was doing it. It wasn't on the internet. Like, no
Yeah.
one
And
even
now
knew what
it's
it
like,
was.
I had the same experience when I had my full human. It wasn't by a shaman. It was some Australian in Bali. But when she read my full human design chart, it was so validating. Not only for like, because I'm a projector as well, and that's the way that I know I work. It's all about protecting my energy, needing a lot of time alone, not hustling, not being like the 9 to 5 worker. I'm not like a worker bee type, but it was also really validating for where I felt that I was being pulled as well, in terms of like my direction of life, like shedding all of these old versions and being like, wow, this is actually a template that I can follow. So first of all, you have an app that people can use to find their human design type. And there's 4, correct?
There's 5.
Fine.
There's just one that's very rare, so people don't often
Okay.
talk about it. But the app is called Align, and I built it in COVID because my waitlist was a year and a half long, and I already had courses online. If you want to get certified in reading human design, you can do that with me at myhuman.com. And I had videos on different aspects of the chart. They're all still there too, by the way, for people who want to go in deeper. But I just knew that there is going to be people seeking spiritual information in a hurry so soon. And also, there's another part of me that's slightly rebellious that hates the fact that everything in this industry costs so much money. So my dream was like, wouldn't it be cool if for the price of a latte a month, people can get a reading, but also get a reading for all their family, all their friends? You know, if you spend all the money to do that, all those sessions, you're, you know, let's say $200 in each time, and then you have follow-up questions, and then you want to know how to apply it to how you pack or how you should have sex or how you, any of these things, right? So that was my dream, and so it's all on the Align app. And then there's also like custom tips every day to help you apply it to different points of your life. So it's really the sort of comprehensive place where you can just go in deep, because there's also a lot of incorrect information about human design on the internet, and also human design information that people say feels very constricting and very limiting. And I want people to know this is a tool of liberation and not of you can't do this or you're doomed for that. And if anyone makes you feel that way on anything spiritual, please discard. So human design was basically formulated in 1987, so it's a really new modality, but it's really scientifically backed, and it's really cool because right now some of the things that the founder used to say back in the day are now being proven as correct, or scientists are now studying these things.
Like, give me
So
an example.
so he used to say that neutrinos, which are subatomic particles generated by all the planets in the solar system, he used to say they move at 99.8% of the speed of light. And right now in the South Pole, and forgive me if I haven't fully kept up with this experiment, but as far as I know, there is a 1 million cubic meters block of ice in the South Pole that scientists are running neutrinos, these subatomic particles, through to actually observe how they behave, because they don't actually know how they behave and what it is that they do when you observe them and how fast they move and how they compare to light and whatever. So anyway, it's since been corroborated that they do move just a little bit less than the speed of light, but that was something that he just downloaded basically. And then there's another really interesting thing which fascinates me is that you know, everything you know about like magnets, everything in the sort of observable universe so far, you have like when you have a science class, like it's a plus and a minus, there's like two poles, or on the earth there's like two poles. So what we've always found is only evidence of dipoles, which means the existence of two. And scientists are like, okay, but there's got to be, in order for the universe to make sense, there's also got to be monopoles. And they haven't found any monopoles yet. They might do. Ra, who the founder of human design, used to say that we have something inside of us called a crystal of consciousness. This crystal of consciousness is what gets formulated when you marry the piece of your a body with a soul. There's like, it creates this like sort of like tension, a magnetism, if you will, and it holds the form together, right? It holds like the half of you that's divine and the half of you that's just random human, right? And it keeps the form together. And this is what's called a magnetic monopole. And everyone has one inside of us. And this monopole is orienting towards, imagine if you're in a car and it's always trying to get you to where life wants you to end up. So the other thing that's driving the car is the universe's curriculum for you, and you are in the car. Now, he used to call the ultimate thing we need to do in life is called passenger consciousness. I was mentioning earlier about surrendering the intellect to the form. What happens is if you're always trying to drive your life with your mind, you are not in the car, because this monopole is always trying to get you to your destiny. It knows how to get you to your destiny. Your human design teaches you how to make the exact right decisions at each juncture of this destiny to stay on that path. And if you're using your mind or you're making the wrong decisions from the mental, then you're just always getting out of the car. But the car's always going to drive. The car's always doing the thing. So reason it's called passenger consciousness is because if we let the body move through space the way it's meant to, by just not needing to know how it's all going to work out, but just being exactly radically present with how our bodies, and knowing exactly how they teach us, how they talk to us by our intuition, because everyone's intuition is different and shows up differently to them. You know how to make every correct decision. You can end up watching the movie of your life as it unfolds instead of, i.e., being a passenger, instead of ending up at the end and being like, hold on, I wasn't even present. That gives me chills. I wasn't even present for any of it. And God forbid, we don't want to get to the end of our life and pop out on the other side and be like, oh my God, I missed the whole thing. Like, please let me go back. That's a prison that I don't want any human to be in.
Yeah, because I was like trying to force and control. It's such a beautiful concept, and I feel like where people get in trouble is like the way that you phrased it, like life is always trying to bring you where you're meant to be, and people get in trouble when they're like clinging on to people or, you know, situations or whatever to feel safe, but it's actually the universe or your, you know, destiny trying to guide you to where you're meant to go. And if you just stop clinging on to those things and really surrender, then that's when things start to get really beautiful.
Yeah. And it's a really deep concept because it's so small, like it's hidden in such mundane things too, where like you don't have to have terrible things happening to you or like big changes to know that this is needs to be applied. You need to respect our daily life enough to know that it does cost us to go to the party just because we're told that that makes us fun, instead of on just for today, I'm listening to my gut, I don't feel like going. Does that mean I'm not going to be fun forever? Does that mean this? Does it mean that about me? Does it say this about me? What are people going to think? Because the hardest thing is deconditioning, basically trying to sign out of all the homogenized information that tries to make us all the same. And in doing so, it's stamping all of our individuality down, robbing us of our color, of our essence. We give up our essence every time we make a choice that comes from conditioning. So I'll give you an example. And this was a very difficult example to make. And there's never a guarantee that it's going to work out well in the moment. And if we wait for the guarantee, then we never get to try being ourselves.
Right.
So when I had a book come out, almost 2 years ago now, I could have done it the way that everyone does it, which is, you know, reach out to a lot of podcasts, go on a lot of, you know, try and go on TV shows, try and do the jazz hands and whatever. And I just sat with myself and I was like, you know what? I cannot have a human design book come out and not walk my talk. Like, that's not going to work because I know how the universe rewards us and gives us blessings and whatever. Like, there's no getting away with stuff anymore, right? There's just like the universe is always watching. So I was like, okay, in that case, let me try doing this the exact way that I know is the correct way for me, and doing it by what my inside human design authority is, listen to my human design strategy, put all these pieces together, be who I really came here to be, and put my money where my mouth is. This is where the rubber meets the road. It's like when it's hard to be your real self, when the world says, are you sure that's going to work out? Because you're not getting on a New York Times bestseller list doing that, whatever.
Yeah.
So I said to myself, you know what? I'm just going to wait for the invitations. I'm putting the book out there. I'm making it available. I'm not hiding it from people. I'm sharing openly on my platform. The right invitations will come, and I'm not going to get in my head about the ones that need to happen, the ones that are more important than others, all that stuff. The ones that I truly got invited for were the ones that did the best, and they weren't the top podcasts. Every single time I did try once to send someone my book that my mind thought I wanted to be on, which is just for ego. The book bounced back from the address. And I've literally not kind of made hooks in people to create a place of lack in them to make them feel like they needed that. Because again, I don't want to have that on my karma. I can't afford that.
Yeah.
And the coolest thing is that my book has, and I only recently found this out, my book has consistently sold the exact same amount and continues to this day as the first day that it came out. And I said, I don't care about New York Times bestseller list. I just want it to be an evergreen thing that people just always know is there for them. And that's how it happened.
Yeah, because you followed what was the right answer for you. And I think that requires, though, a strong sense of intuition. And I feel like a lot of people are having a hard time, at least what I'm seeing kind of generally, have a hard time listening to their intuition now and separating like what is conditioning from intuition, especially when we live in like the social media age of like, if this happens, then this, and 5 steps to blah, blah, blah. Like, what are some, maybe like before we get into the human design tips, what are maybe some, I guess, tips that you have for people to form that connection with their most authentic self?
So it's actually in your human design. It's one of the key
Perfect.
components in there, and it's called your authority.
Mm,
So we're all told, like, listen to your intuition, like, listen to your inside voice, listen to your gut. What does your gut instinct say? Human design basically says that back to the form knows, because the form is the vehicle, it's the car, right? It's doing its thing. We're just interfering. So basically, imagine that we all have different energies inside of us, right? We have the energy of our mind that governs our opinions and our perspectives. We have the energy of our crown chakra that is, our inspiration. Our throat is communication. They're sort of the very obvious things that you would have. Now, there are 9 centers in your human design chart because they say that we have evolved more as human beings genetically since the 7 chakras were discovered, seen, acknowledged, whatever. So we have 9. And basically, everybody has one of those parts of them that is like the MVP of their chart that kind of is in charge of making the decisions. So, what was also so revelatory to me is that when people say gut feelings, I don't get gut feelings. I don't feel it in my gut. I feel it in my emotions. I feel it into how I feel because my authority is emotional. It's hidden in my solar plexus. Some other people have it in their gut where it shows up in such a different way than your emotions, right? The gut is like very like, you can feel it. People who are generators and manifesting generators, they feel that excitement in their gut. They feel like it's a tangible experience because they're more kind of like physical beings than we are, right? So with us, it's sometimes more subtle than it would be for someone else, and it goes on and on. So there's so many different kinds of authority, and the reason why your intuition is called your authority is because when you listen to your inner authority, you become the authority of your own life, i.e., you stop giving authority away to external people, places, and things, and you stop opinion shopping, and you stop listening to the algorithm, and you stop, being so in your mind, because no one is meant to be making decisions with their mind, which is mind-blowing in itself. Like, that's not correct
right.
for anyone.
Yeah.
So the important thing about that, and actually this is something that we recently launched with the app, is that we have a component in there called the decision maker. And what it does is it takes your chart, it identifies what kind of way you're supposed to make decisions, and it walks you through almost like a journal where you can go in and make one small decision a day and log in how to actually tune into it. Because your intuition, if you've silenced it for such a long time, it's so hard to hear it, and you can't just like mentally decide that you can all of a sudden hear it. It's like it has to have the volume dialed up on it, and back to that evidence, then you can look back on your calendar and say, oh my god, like stringing 17 days together of like, oh, like, stopping drinking almond milk, actually I logged it there. I didn't action it yet because I maybe wasn't ready, which you can also do. But now I'm seeing the rhyme and reason. And so then you can start to connect the dots of when your intuition is always right. Because otherwise you're just kind of like, it sometimes works, it sometimes doesn't. I don't know when it does. And then you get pulled back into the mind.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited about the decision maker, because I think if you just, and this is originally in the text, is that if you only listen to your what we'll call your strategy, listening to the way your energy is meant to run, and your authority, you would naturally end up living every other part of your human design without even knowing what it is, because your strategy and your authority would lead you there. So the authority is like, and it's more important than ever because we are just swimming in a sea that tempts us to give our power and our attention to them all the time. And that we're all reaching this crux moment where we're like, I can't afford to do this any longer. What have I got to lose but to try, F around and find out, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And it's such a muscle too, right? Like you're not going to become, super intuitive overnight, but it is like also I'm downloading the app after this because that's incredible. But it is a muscle that you have to practice and practice noticing when you were quote unquote right. And also taking, time for yourself to be present too. It's like people are so bombarded with like content and so on their phones scrolling all day and constantly distracting. And so for me, it's really about like also taking that time to be alone and be present in nature a lot. I know you're the same way.
100%.
So 4 types of human design, and also what are they called? The authority? No. What's for each of them? The signature, the strategy, and the not self.
Yeah.
For all 4. Give me the spiel.
Okay, I'll keep it semi-brief, but you have 5 what's called energy types. And what human design really is the science of your aura. So you have an energy body that is much bigger than your physical body. And it has like, imagine it has like junctures going in and out. There's energy going in, there's energy going out. How do we use it? How do we exchange it? What are we giving out to the world? What are we receiving to the world? And basically your human design is just mapping your aura. And so if you have a specific way that your aura is mapped, like, okay, I need a different map for the city of London than I do for Ibiza or Miami, right? So if I'm trying to go out into the world and assume that the city of London map is going to get me anywhere I want to go elsewhere in the world, is incorrect. The same goes for humans. So your map is different than my map. If I try to do it your way, there might be a couple things where we actually just end up having to be matched on those things by accident, but I can't just copy paste what's in your manual. So the first thing to know about your aura, your energetic body, is what energy type you are. So energy type is number one, and then authority comes second. Your energy type is basically how you use and receive and give and replenish energy with the world around you. So the exchange pattern. So you have 5 energy types, and they're not indicative of personality. They're just indicative of how you use the car. Personalities come in other things, in all your gifts, in your profiles, in your incarnation cross, all of that stuff, which all gets explained in the app. But your energy type is how you exchange with the world around you. So different people are meant to work, sleep, create, function, exercise, have sex, take on ideas, and so on and so forth than other people. So you have 5 types. You have generators, manifestors, manifesting generators, projectors, and reflectors. Now, I'll give you an overview, is that generators are people who they have a very open and welcoming aura. So when they are excited and they are at their best, they're the classic people who came here to be so in love or excited by one thing in life, and they give it their energy, they give it their all, day in and day out, and it compounds, and they become masters of a craft. They really stay devoted to something that they really love, but really love is key. So you have people like Jeff Bezos or Oprah or Beyonce. They've reached the top of their craft. They're all generators because they just stay the course. And when generators are doing what they love, it gives off your aura, their body literally creates life force, which is why they're called generators, because they generate warm, juicy, infectious life force that it creates such a surplus that it spills out of them and it draws other people in. And we want a piece of what they're doing, and we want to swim in that aura. We want to swim in their energy. We want to collaborate with them. We want to be close to them. But the key is loving what they do. Whenever a generator doesn't like what they do, instead of it giving them more energy, it takes energy from them. Because that's the way that the universe is saying, honey, redirect. This is not what you're supposed to be. It's not what you're supposed to be. But generators are very conditioned to kind of praise themselves for doing things they don't enjoy. That's their heaviest conditioning, and it feels so real to them. So when a generator does anything that they love, whether it's, your purpose, or whether it's how you are with your kids, or what kind of coffee you get in a day, when you're doing something that physically, viscerally lights you up in your gut, that's how you know you're on purpose, and that's how you're going to do the thing you come here to do, which is to spill life force, like to be this ebullient, infectious, high vibrational generating of that good vibe, no matter what it is you do, whether you're a gardener, whether you're making sneakers, it doesn't matter. And I want to stress to everybody that actually it doesn't really matter what you do. Like, we spend so much time assessing the actual, like, well, if I go into content creation, is it going to be more successful than if I do this or whatever? And it's actually not about that. You just have to do the thing you're enjoying, but the work is to bring your energy and your alignment to the thing, and then anything will work out. You could become a horticulturist and be more successful and more happy than someone who's trying to mimic someone else's path, that just because we see there's some evidence of it working out sometimes isn't going to be your thing, because the universe is always trying to gracefully pivot us. So that's generators. That when they're doing what they love, they feel satisfied by life. They feel like, oh, I feel like I just soaked up every moment of today and I feel so great, and now I can when my head hits the pillow, I'm happy with it, whatever. Then you have manifestors. And manifestors are people who are, throughout all of history, most kings and queens and rulers of countries have been manifestors. Manifestors are people who are very not consistent with their energy, unlike generators. So manifestors work at these like fits and bursts of big energy because they have ginormous auras and they impact people. Their aura, like if they're walking into a room, you don't even consciously know this, but their aura is already impacting yours. That's
Like,
even if they're just trying to keep to themselves and serve themselves a coffee. Like you just they make the impact in the room. And a manifester is supposed to almost like flick sparks for everybody else to respond to. So manifestors are not here to be devoted and do the same thing every day, have the same energy level, be consistent. They are here to really be bold enough to act on the things that just come to them. And it doesn't have to be big actions. It's often just words that they say, but they have to be brave enough to say the thing that's just like the raw thing that isn't well thought out, that isn't definitely going to get them approval, that isn't definitely going to have people support them straight away, but it just, if it has to come out and you said exactly how it's coming to you, and that creates a spark, like, okay, we're going to do this, and then whoever wants to come on board comes on board, and that's how you create momentum. So manifestors are momentum creators in this
is
world.
Donald Trump a manifester?
You know what? I used to think that he is, but there's ultimately different birth times for him. So some people have said he's a manifesting generator. And again, like zero judgment on the consciousness. You know what I mean? It's just it's an energy. You can use it in a high vibration way. You can use it in a low vibration way, and also in a mix. Which I believe there's mix, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Some great, some bad, and also who we to know what's ultimately going to work out. Well, it's just there's too much like whatever.
It's a bigger game.
Bigger game.
Yeah.
But famous manifestors will be like Gloria Steinem, right? She created a movement. She changed the course of the world because of her bravery, in a way. And then you also have people like, Alex, Alex Icon is a manifestor. And he recently said to me, for your listeners, he's the one of the co-creators of the 5-Minute Journal. And he was behind the summit that we were both at. And him, without necessarily knowing everything about his chart, he was like, I just can't finish things. Like, I just like to go in and like start things and like flick the domino. And I'm like, that's exactly a manifestor. And no one should have guilt about feeling like they got the best lot, because everyone should feel like they got the best one. Do you know what I mean? Like, of course you shouldn't finish what you start. And there'll be other people who want to just genuinely be part of what it is you're doing and want to be part of that team, and they'll happily finish what you start. You've created their dream job, and that's what we all do for each other, but instead of we're trying to be everything, we're trying to dampen ourselves down. We don't think we can be, so devoted or have it as easy as a generator can, that they love everything that they do every day, or a manifestor can't just finish what they start. That's what blocks us. So then, a great shadow for manifestors is like, how can I just say things before I know that it's going to work out? How can I just, be at my 200% energy level and then also disappear afterwards when I'm done and be at 0 until the next thing I feel like doing comes to me? We're not living in a world that supports that.
Yeah.
And then you have manifesting generators. Manifesting generators are a hybrid of the first two, where they have the consistent ability to have life force and sort of gut energy that generators do. But instead of like generators who are very devotional and one track and reach the top of their field by compounding, manifesting generators have that slight manifestor energy, which is more spontaneous and more playful. So manifesting generators are actually not here to stay the course, not here to do the path, also not here to finish what they started necessarily, like a manifestors, same thing. So when you combine those two things together, they're people who actually learn much quicker than, for example, generators do. And I don't mean mentally learn, I mean physically master, get on a journey of mastery. Like if you're learning to play the harp, you just get it quicker. Why? Because your energy is bigger, it's more multi-directional, they're more multifaceted, and they're combining always different elements of different things and kind of doing some alchemy to like mix them in different ways. So I'll give you an example. My cousin is a manifesting generator. She's probably one of the top subconscious reprogrammers in the world. And she also is DJing. And it doesn't make any sense to anyone who would tell her to pick one or, that she's got to choose one if you've got to be really good at something. And yet they feed each other, and yet they don't take away from each other. And yet she gives herself the permission to do both. And they're both incredible things. And so manifesting generators are the sort of classic multi-hyphenates, where they'll end up doing multiple things at a time, or just multiple things in their lifetime, or mixing things in unusual ways to fuse them into something that is a
Yeah.
creation of all its own, like a category all of its own.
Yeah.
So
Question
they,
for
yeah.
question for manifesting generators and manifestors. If there's any entrepreneurs listening that are in that type, how does that look for them? Like, is it very important that they have a team to kind of execute on their vision that they start, or?
I mean, not necessarily in the sense that there's a way to use your energy no matter what current circumstance you're in. So I want people to never feel like they have to create something on the outside in order to start using their energy better, because it's almost like thinking that you're going to need a team to be who you are. It then stops you from just using your energy correctly, and then the universe showing you the solution to how that thing can get finished, or how you can like pivot quickly as a manifesting generator or whatever. And because there's so many of each type in the world, like if you divide 8 billion by, those different categories, it's still a lot of people. And so we
Yeah.
all will have different approaches. So I wouldn't necessarily say that everyone needs a team, because I also know a lot of people that completely work on their own. But ultimately, we all are supposed to live in collaboration. So even if you've hired the team or not, what you find is that the more you just stick to what you do really well, then somehow people that do the other things that you felt like you had to do just kind of appear, or
Yeah.
that stuff just gets taken off your plate and it stops existing, because it maybe is only something that you need to do because you're still holding on to the belief that that's something that has to happen for you to have a successful business.
Right.
Where maybe you don't even need that role, or you don't even need that task to get done because the outcome happened anyway, or whatever it is. So I think there's
Yeah.
a lot more room for us to allow ourselves to be surprised and delighted by life, by prioritizing not all we need to do on the outside, but the becoming that we need to do before the world or the outside shows us it's okay. That's
Yeah.
the bravery of the hero's journey.
Okay, now that makes sense. Because you say some with manifesting generators and or manifestors that they're really good at starting an idea. So then it would be the completion of it would be what I was curious about.
Yeah. You can take people like Johnny Depp is a good example of a manifestor, where I don't know, he probably does have a team, but when you think about him in on a show, if he's acting or whatever, he's
Yeah.
not necessarily, you could say he's finishing what he started because he's doing his job. He's acting. He hasn't got someone who's finishing his acting role, but he's doing the thing that he's meant to do, which is reactivating the best possible scenario to happen for him and give him an easier time. Because I've heard that when he was playing Jack Sparrow, for example, he would tell people like how he'd want to be. Like he would be that character, and it wasn't from the director. He was just being that character, and that's obviously what's made the franchise so successful. And he's just go in, and if he felt like doing this today, and I think we have a lot of negative beliefs around that stuff, because we kind of think the only way you can do that is at the expense of other people. There's ways to honor yourself, and this is what we all have to do, is honor ourselves without thinking it's like being arrogant or taking from people, or
Yeah.
doing it and I'm better than you, or I'm kind of hoarding like the precious resources for myself. That's like seeing it as the way that you give to the world, and going in with that intention is really helpful. And still to this day, it's one of the most famous Disney franchises, all because he was brave enough to just what we call inform, which is the strategy of a
Yeah.
manifester. So it's almost like you do these flickers, and you do have energy dips and lulls. But Adele is another one of my favorites, or
Gotcha.
J.K. Rowling. You know, they pop out, they write a book, you don't see
And
them,
disappear. Yeah.
they disappear. They're
Yeah.
not here to
Yeah.
finish the movement. Other people are part of the movement, taking it on from them, and they're just
I
writing
see.
another book.
I see what you mean. Okay. Okay, that makes sense. And they create an impact that people really remember.
Respond to.
Yeah.
People respond to that
So
impact.
yeah, and then what are the ones that are left? Projectors, us,
Projectors and
and then
reflectors.
reflectors.
Yeah. So projectors are the newest type, and they came in because we were ready at some point in history we kind of learned enough of the rules of how to, use this material world, like how to survive, how to get food, how to whatever, that human beings collectively earned this beautiful next level of, okay, well, now we know how to do this stuff. We know how the rules of the game work. What do I want to do with my life? Like if I have if I can choose an apprenticeship, it's not being given to me because I'm from this lineage. Like that's what happened in the 1780s, yes, was when this projectors came in. And yeah, so it started just kind of opening up more choice and possibility for human beings once we kind of like got that first bit down. Well, I want to say though that humanity has moved in cycles, so it hasn't been linear, that we've never been able to do this before. But projectors have been created as a type to actually assist the generators, the manifesting generators, and the manifestors in their own journey, going from A to B. The gift that a projector has is not so much to think about their own life force and how they use their life force and try and drive like the same energy level that a generator or a manifesting generator or a manifestor does, because they all are what we call energetic beings, so they create energy. We actually take on other people's energy and we magnify it. So we're around a generator and it's like it's putting our finger in a socket. It like powers us up. It brings us to life. We don't do that on our own, but the gift of not being mired with that energy of our own is that we are then able to see other people's energetic paths, let's say. And we each have a different way of seeing, I wonder if you like went a bit 1 degree to the side, maybe that would work out better for you, which those people can't. Listen, everyone is self-aware, everyone can be self-aware, but there's a specific kind of tweaking and guidance that a projector can give, because our aura is a very it's a seeing aura, so we see deeply into the other. The reason it's called being a projector is because you're shining a light on someone, and when you're like in the cinema, you see the things that are around the corners that the person looking at you can't see because it's behind them. So you're seeing around the backs and the shadows and the creaks and the corners. And different projectors, every type can be any job. You can be an amazing projector as a coder. You could be an amazing projector as a lawyer. You can be an amazing projector as a healer, as a guide. You can also be an amazing manifesting generator who's a healer and a guide. Although I would think you'd probably bring in a bunch of different things and mix them together. So projectors are people who are deeply seeing or spotting some kind of area of improvement. My sister always jokes that she can spot a projector when she says the words efficiency gain and they just like come online.
Yeah.
So that's what we are all fascinated by is how we can figure out what kind of seeing we do well and then be in service to other people. And when we are in service with that guidance is when we become successful. So we don't get successful by saying, the same thing that an Adele would do or the same thing that, an Oprah would do. It's not that kind of thing where it's like, it's not doing what we love. It is doing what we love, but it's not engaging your energy every day towards that thing because it's giving you life. It's really, honestly, it's wanting to serve people and help people do their thing better is what makes
Yeah.
us high.
Yeah, and as soon as I learned about this, everything in my life clicked for me, because I oftentimes find that I, in relationships and friendships, I can either be very triggering or very healing because I have to learn how to wait for the invitation, because you can probably relate to this. You can see people's blind spots and sit down with somebody for 10 minutes and hear about a problem they're having and consider it in a way that they never did. But if somebody isn't ready for hearing that advice or hearing what you are seeing, it can be really destabilizing.
And again, everyone can see into others and we all need each other and all that stuff. But there's a specific kind of seeing that you're talking about, which is like an auric. It's how our auras interact basically with those people. And it is all the difference between, like you said, waiting for the invitation, which is what projectors need to be doing, which is that, of course, you can create your offering, you can write the book, you can make the course, you can make the music, all of that stuff, because that's making it obvious what people could come to you for, what kind of seeing you offer. Otherwise, then they're not they can't just guess.
Right.
But we can't be approaching people with saying, I think you need what I've got, because that's very off-putting, versus when people who we need to trust that the universe is going to send us people who really want what we have, the people who we're actually meant to serve, not who our minds think we should serve, like, oh, I need my dad to hear this, or I need this big podcaster to see my book, right?
Yeah.
Those invitations, they turn sour and we become bitter, and then we feel unsuccessful. Success actually comes when we say, I'm going to share my gifts with whoever actually wants them. And it's in them saying that they want them that sweetens the exchange. If that hasn't happened first, the exchange is not infused with the good energy, because there has to be a place first in the other person for what you're going to say to land. Otherwise, it just comes straight back, return to sender.
Yeah. So it's like no cold pitching, no cold DMing your offer to
No,
people. But also
no.
what I've realized too is that if somebody's following you on social media, that is the invitation.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And if someone is receiving your newsletter, absolutely. But
Hmm.
it's also more subtle than that because it's the way in which you sell too, right? It's the energy that you're doing it with, where you could be
Hmm.
also, doing it on social media where you're like, you need my thing because this and this and this, versus like,
Yeah.
this is what I do. It's more open. It's more, I don't want to make someone think they want what I have if they don't actually want it and they're wanting it from their own place of lack. Like, that's going
Hmm.
to short circuit too. So I want
Totally.
it to just awaken it in people who genuinely are the right energetic exchange for me, because that's better for my alignment,
Mm.
better for theirs. Everybody wins, right? And
Yeah.
so there's no like, there's a lot of like shortcuts and these hooks, and we sell out of
Yeah.
this and sell people feel like we just cannot get away with that game anymore because the universe sees
Yeah.
everything. So
Yeah.
we have to choose our own integrity and our own alignment and what's best for others and ourselves at every point now, because there's no going back. It's going to get
Yeah.
even harder and harder to hide by
Hmm.
doing these like sneaky things we try to do.
I know. I'm excited to talk to you about like how everything is changing in that sense. One left, Reflectors, which is like the smallest
They're the
portion of the
most,
population.
yeah, they're the most rare of all the types, maybe
Mm.
1% of the population. And they are people who are here to truly reflect you back to you, which is different than spotting an improvement you can do.
Mm.
When you are with a reflector who is aligned, you
Hmm.
literally see yourself in them. You learn about yourself through just being around them, not because of what they say, right? Not because of necessarily you're going to them for the feedback, but because being
Hmm.
in their presence is like not being around another human. When you're around another human, you're kind of conditioning each other all the time. When you're with a reflector, it's only ever you that could have the potential to condition the reflector, unless they are out of alignment and they're trying to condition you. So you are fully able to taste your own energy through another human and receive
Mm.
that kind of feedback in a way that you can't with other human beings. We call all of the other four types solar beings, and reflectors are lunar. So it's softer. It doesn't necessarily like reveal itself, obviously. It's kind of a
Hmm.
bit intangible, and so with reflectors, they are here to be the wisest of them all in the sort of in the energetic way of wisdom,
Hmm.
because they are totally blank canvases of human beings that they say, imagine if there's one in every 100 reflectors, and reflectors were at the sort of center of that tribe. Everyone would know, because a reflector is not well, it means someone is not well in the tribe. If there's an
Mm.
illness going on with a projector, the environment is maybe toxic. They're the ones who are these like sort of like what do you call those things when they send the birds down into the mines? You know, the
I
canary in
don't
a
know,
coal
but
mine.
yeah, but sort of like the temperature indicators maybe also.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
So that's the role that they're here to play in society, but it's not easy for them because we live in a world where for 99% of the population this advice is true, which is like, know who you are, stick to yourself, be consistently yourself. And reflectors, because they're constantly being um uh, swimming in different people's waves, their
Mm.
personality changes much more broadly than anyone else's does. And that can really trip them out, because they're like, who am I? When really what you are is the moment. And so
Mm.
if they try to keep on asking that question and trying to make something their identity, which they can, because for example, if I'm a reflector and I'm around you, I'm seeing all the beauty in you, and then my mind would go, if it's trying to interfere, I need to just become more like Christina because I love like being in her light. And now I need to like figure out with
Mm.
myself, and I need to, wear what she's wearing or say what she's saying and do similar
Hmm.
kinds of products or whatever. And the spontaneity, the desire to be spontaneous really gets them, whereas they are like much longer and slower. But that doesn't mean that they get to their gifts much slower. It just means that
Mm.
something that is right for you as a guidance is going to have to come over and over again for it to be true. And so you can't act on impulse, and that's how you become wise.
That's got to be a really difficult type to be. How do you, if there's any reflectors listening, the 1%, how do they connect to their truest self or find a grounding? Is there a
So
truest self?
the truest self is that you are able to witness and taste more flavors of humanity than everyone else does, because you are
Mm.
not locked in.
Mm.
And using, so if you are a reflector and you have the app, the decision maker is always it's custom, right? So it's always leading you back to all reflectors have the same authority, which is lunar, which means that you start noting down the little nudges that the universe gives you over the course of a lunar cycle, and then you can track it back and see, oh, this one only came to me once as a fleeting thing, but actually I 3 times over this month it told me to write a book. That was my nudge. So the ones that come to you consistently are actually the ones that are correct.
Right. Okay. Okay, that makes sense. So we've been talking about using your human design to sort of inform the way that you use your energy to move through the world on an individual level. I want to zoom out a little bit and talk about something that I know you've been fascinated by and that I'm fascinated by, which is human design at a collective level and what you're seeing happen in terms of like the new paradigm that we're moving into and how human design and maybe astrology is informing that.
So when human design was formulated, it was a total and complete science. And so in 1987, the founder said, in 2027, there's going to be a changing of eras. And this is what it's going to look like. This is what it's going to look like. But in the lead up to that era ending, we're going to see all the things about this current paradigm that aren't energetically for the best for our next phase come crumbling down. Now, so, you can see many people now starting to talk about the world changing, but that's because we already have evidence that the world has changed. This should make you feel, or at least it makes me feel like it's not just because we're publicly reaffirming a common perception that's of the moment. This was always foretold. And so in 2017 or 2018, I made a video about this called The New Paradigm, saying that these structures were going to crumble and that, people weren't going to go to the workplaces, all the things that we're starting to see now, and then some. And essentially, yes, what we're seeing is that everything that was not built collectively for our highest good, because this era was about building collective things. The last 400 years, it's like we've made, globalization has become a thing, and industrialization has become a thing, and privatization from governments, and big everything, big food, big pharma, big this, big that, and also big corporations. Like all of that stuff has been created. There's been some positive things which we don't want to throw out, but all the things that are negative about those things have to go before we go into the next era, which is an era of the individual. And the individual also will have its positive and its negative things. We're already starting to see flavors of individualization towards the positive and towards the negative. And so this was always supposed to be, as we lead up to 2027, a quickening, because life or the universe wants to basically make sure that we kick out all the things that are no longer healthy for us before we enter the new era, so we can enter the new era seeding it with the best possible consciousness and also the best possible kind of physical world, like how we actually structure the world around us to support that. So that's really the promising part of it for me, is like I'm not scared because I know all this human design information about where it's going to go. And in the app, I do a monthly workshop about exactly where we are in the march to the new paradigm, in the sequence it has to go in order for things to change, so that you're prepared for, okay, this month is about this, and then the next month is going to be about something else. So you feel held in it rather than just in so much chaos,
Yeah. Can you give specific examples of like what is going on in the world for people to like ground it in sort of like what they're seeing in the news right now? Because is this why spiritualists are kind of excited by Donald Trump and the way things are sort of like falling apart in a lot of ways? It seems on the surface, at least.
I try to not necessarily pin my thing to this is going to be the thing that's happening because of this, especially now, because things that are super up 1 minute are down in a split second. The stock market is up and down like never before. Everything is super unstable. So we don't know what's good or bad in the moment. We just can know where it's leading to. And there's a really interesting part of astrology where when you are a leader of a country, you step between the two worlds, right? Because the country has its own astrology that needs to be happening in some way, shape, or form. And that it makes it more important, or equally as important, because your personal astrology is now playing a big part in the world stage. So it's not always so easy to tell. I just don't want to be like hanging
Yeah,
my high hat on horses of this is why Trump is good or Trump is bad. Like
totally.
I don't do that's all ego to me.
Totally.
Um, and the only thing that knows all that is the universe ultimately.
Yeah.
So, but some tangible examples, for example, are, well, this is an easy one that's probably, hopefully, not so charged. And this is one that isn't, it's not one that everyone else is talking about. So I hope I'm giving you something new and novel.
Yeah.
I think people are realizing, but maybe just not so overtly, that they don't need to go to college as much. And not going to college then means that you're not starting your life off already on a back foot because you have so much debt. And then you're not being programmed or getting used to always living in debt. So if you're starting off from a 0 point, then maybe you're not going to be as keen to spend too much on your credit card. Maybe you're going to be more outraged when something does put you in debt, like a medical bill, right? Maybe you're going to have less of a tolerance for it. And then the knock-on effects of that is also that maybe the university system needs to start charging less or having less courses or only focusing on people who actually need vocations. And so instead of controlling so much money and taking so many grants from people and being this big, kind of overweight system, the university system is like it's a really fat system, unnecessarily so, that's glomming up a lot of money and very inefficiently, will get undone, not because someone, maybe not because someone picketed in the streets, although they could, but I believe because it will be a quiet mass signing out of something that we no longer believe. And I actually am
Yeah.
more interested in focusing on those changes like that than the ones that take all the news and everyone jumps on board with and everyone has an
Right.
opinion about. Because by that time, it's already done. Like, I don't need to have an
Yeah.
opinion on that. You saw that,
Yeah.
the new paradigm sees that coming. And once it's unfolding, you're like, okay, next one, what's coming after that, you know?
Yeah. I'm curious. I don't know if this is controversial or not. And religious institutions, how do you see that? And you can let me know separately if you don't want me
Yeah.
to include this, but I'm curious about religious institutions because it feels like we're moving towards this era where simultaneously people need to find something, I think, higher than themselves, but also people are spiritually developing and finding that power within.
So, with the institutions, it's not that, for example, we won't have government. It's just that everything that is incorrect, every one that is incorrect, every way of approaching it, every commonly held bounce back between the people that are in it kind of misconception or false belief or lack of control is going to get taken out. But there will be people who will do that in a high vibrational way. So if you dream of being a preacher and you want to succeed, just make sure that you do it in the most kind, high consciousness, no ego, service, no separation. And so I do believe that religions will continue, but everything that is not correct about them will leave, because it's easy for us to say, not easy for us, but easy for some people to say religion is the thing that's negative, but it's not. And also, we are so consumed with things are good and bad. What we don't realize is it depends on where we are, right? So for someone, that religion is their medicine, and for someone else, it's their poison. It depends on what it's providing you and what vibrations you're needing to add next in your journey that are correct for you. So, and it's not to say that, oh, first you needed religion and then you didn't. Like, you might go
Right.
back to it, and then
Yeah.
you vibrate with different things at different times. And so it's with religion and institutions like that. And I don't think colleges will completely go away either, because we need our lawyers and our doctors and our vets
Doctors,
and
yeah.
all those people, but we certainly don't need as many people. And maybe those people get government granted to do so, because they shouldn't have to, be so out of pocket to do something that is so often a
Serving
thankless job
humanity.
that we
Yeah.
rely on so much.
Right. Yeah.
So I hope I have tried to give you things that are just a bit more like, I can easily say the workplace is changing, but everyone knows that
Right.
already. Do you know what I mean? That's kind of
Yeah.
well accepted already.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah. And as we move into this more kind of like individual era, as you were talking about it, what are the sort of like high vibrational light sides of this era versus the darker sides that we should look out
Mm,
for?
that's such a good question. So the high vibrational is I'm radically choosing to trust my own path and to not be homogenized and to
Mm.
individuate. And life is going to make it harder and harder for us to be individuals. If you already know what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the darker sides is two. One is not being individual, but thinking that you're being individual because of all the mental stimulation that's coming our way with, ChatGPT is going to confirm everything about you that you already are. It's never going to push you to be something greater than your existing
Yes.
vibration,
Oh my gosh.
ever,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
ever.
Yeah.
Impossible. So it's only going to keep you at the current vibration that you're at. And if you default
Mm-hmm.
your authority to ChatGPT, that's what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to lose your authority, you're going to lose your connection to your individuality.
Yep.
And there'll be many other things that tempt us to stay homogenized and to tempt us with believing there's enough shiny carrots to stay in that game.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can individuate negatively, where you can also say, it's about me, it's all about me, it's not the consideration of others, we're all separate, I'm on my own, I'm better, whatever, rather than I'm an individual whose individuality serves this kind of oneness. So there's
So
two
true.
ways you can go about the negative version, and there's only really
Mm-hmm.
one positive, which is like, that's actually how I serve my ultimate destiny. Is I have to be brave enough to be who
Mm-hmm.
I came here to be before I had the evidence that it was safe to take the leap at every
Yes.
day where there's going to be 25
Mm-hmm.
calls to do that, and we have to just keep choosing it over and over again.
Yeah, that's really beautiful to like have the bravery to be yourself in order to serve the collective in the specific way that you are meant to. I'm so happy you brought up AI. This is like the first thing that we talked about in Ibiza. My thing with ChatGPT recently, man, like first of all, like people are, firing their therapists to work with ChatGPT, and I recently I made a joke to a friend that if I like told ChatGPT like, oh, you know what, I'm actually thinking about killing my friend, it would be like, yeah, really great idea. Like it's just validating of
Hmm.
exactly where you are. And
Hmm.
it's never pushing you to raise your frequency, to expand your thought, like be better in any way. It's just validating of
Hmm.
exactly who you are. And I'm curious, like, your perspective on where it's going to go, because right now, kind of in at least on an individual level with me, I feel like it's pushing us to want that more of that human connection, because it's
Yeah.
so incredibly obvious to me when somebody is using ChatGPT to like, write a LinkedIn post or write an Instagram post,
Yeah.
and it's just going to increase that craving for connection.
It's going to do what all these new factors of the individual era are going to do, which is tempt us very strongly to stay the same or to
Mm.
individuate. And there'll be positive ways that some people can use it and negative. I
Mm-hmm.
currently have never used it in my life, and I'm staying that way until I feel like I need to
Me
or want
too.
to, because
Yeah.
I'm really trying to preserve my individuality and the faculty of my own thought, because that's going to be the biggest currency any of us are going to have in the new
Yeah.
paradigm.
Yeah.
But there's obviously ways to use it if you want to, make code or anything. But if you start assuming now, which is going to happen, everyone is going to be an incredible energy reader. There's no fooling people. There's no pulling wool. There's
No.
no using it to act like you, to
No.
think for you, whatever. You can give it the mundane tasks. Like if one day there's a robot that can wash your dishes, I'm all for it. Great. And even that, by the way, there's an interesting thing, because we all think that we want to be free all the time. And there will be a time when we go, hold on a second, they're like, I don't have any like routine to ground me. I like miss doing my own dishes. So nothing's all good or all bad. It's all about the energy that we play with it in. But I do think that there will be a bifurcation of reality, a splitting of two realities, where there are people who are
Mm-hmm.
living as authorities of their own lives. And that will
Mm-hmm.
be the positive of the individuating time, and it will be
Mm-hmm.
so individual, and it will be literally like walking on a different planet than people who, your ego might even say that is being spiritual, is asking ChatGPT spiritual questions all day, you know
Yeah.
but that's not flexing your individuation muscle, and
Yeah.
that's the focus, that's the
Mm-hmm.
important thing, that's the task right now for all of us.
Yep.
And the world is not going to say, honey, sign up for the task. The world is going to say, forget about the task, it's not important, here's 100 other
Right.
things you could be doing.
Yeah, because I can imagine that's your superpower moving into the new paradigm is the fact that you can think for yourself and not need to feed everything into a robot.
It's such a simple sentence that you just said, but it's the most profound.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being on. This is like such a good conversation. I love that we talked on human design and the new paradigm and just like
Yeah.
spirituality and consciousness in general. Where can people find you on Instagram and obviously your app? I'm like, the second this is over, I'm downloading the app.
So the app is called Align, in the App Store on Android. I have my podcast is called Align. And then I'm just Jenna Zoe on Instagram, or also Human Design on Instagram. If you want specifically human design content, it's there. And then all the other kind of stuff around it is on my Jenna Zoe.
Okay, amazing. Yeah, and for anybody that does not follow you already, please go and do it, because we were talking earlier about this, and she just posts these videos that are the most incredible, just I can tell, just downloads from the universe, like constantly, constantly. And it's
That's
really
sweet.
freeing to see somebody create content in that way. It's really
Oh,
beautiful.
thank you. That means a lot to me. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for having me on. I could have done this for hours.
Oh, good.